All right, you're all going to get to see if I can walk and chew gum at the same time. Uh, Good morning. Thank you to everyone in the room for being here for the bitter end of the conference. I was thinking last night there were going to be 4 people in the room, and those were my fellow panelists, so thank you very much. I'm Laura Mann, and this is about content strategy. Uh, and We're going to talk a little bit about what a content strategy is, briefly at the beginning, and then really my job, though, is to tee up my stellar fellow panelists. Susan Edwards from the Hammer Museum, Brad Dunn from the Field, Ariana French from the American Museum of Natural History, and Jessica Birdie-Frank from the Adler Planetarium. And I think from their presentations, you're going to see that there is no single recipe for content strategy, no single way to make one or do one at a museum. And that should prove, I hope, both inspiring and something of a relief for the folks in the audience. It certainly does for me. And for me, I'm just going to talk a little bit about why are we here and what's the problem space and what is a content strategy and why might you want one for just a couple of minutes. So I'm from Frankly Grin & Webb, and we are a consultancy that works with lots of different museums on all kinds of things, including content strategy. And we've been hearing a lot of pain points around content recently. We have too much content. It's impossible to manage or to organize or maintain. We're making lots of content, but we're not sure who it's for. We don't have enough content for the right people. We don't know if the content we're making is successful or having an impact, lots and lots of questions. And we don't have an agreed upon process for how content gets made, just to name a few. And I want to suggest that one of the reasons for that at this particular moment in time in the museum space is that historically, online content, at least, has been imagined as like kind of the web has been seen as sort of a limitless place for content. You could put content endlessly on the website. It would never fill up, and all that information that didn't fit on the name other content channel could go on the website. And I think, and the thinking was there was no real cost to that. And I don't think I really need to say to the people in this room that of course there's a cost to that in the content that we don't make because we made this other stuff or we're too busy maintaining the stuff we have, or the cost in the fact that our online visitors can't find what they need, or Google is unhappy with our content because there's too much confusing content and our search results for our current and relevant stuff actually drops because we've got too much archival stuff. So what I want to suggest is that at this moment in time, the museum sector is moving from an idea of let's publish all of it, and of course our content should be for everyone, to a more strategic approach. So if this has been the default thinking for a long time, I would say that where we're going is this. But the question is, what does that actually look like? And what I want to suggest is that a content strategy is really a tool and a process for helping you get to the right content for the right audience at the right time on the right platform. And so this is an extremely helpful diagram from a firm called Brain Traffic that specializes in content strategy. And the way that they visualize content strategy is that it is both an external and an internal thing. So it includes external requirements, the needs and motivations of the audience, and internal requirements, the objectives of the organization, resources, processes, things like that. So at the top here, we've got editorial and experience. That's the outward-facing stuff. What is your experience design? What's your editorial approach? What voice and tone, what language do you use with your audiences and which audiences? And then internally, how is your content structured so that visitors can find it? And what are the processes needed to develop, publish, support, maintain your content over time? So that's the inside-outside diagram. And what I also want to suggest is that content strategy is both strategic and creative. So it is both a thing and a process. And so what I mean by that is, from a strategic standpoint, it can have components like a strategy statement, content principles, a workflow diagram for how you make content. But content strategy is also in the doing. It is also in the making and testing of new content or revised content or existing content, for example. And so just to give you a quick example of this, and then I'm going to hand things over to our next panelist, this is a core content strategy statement for a museum. This is for content around its K-12 educator audience. And there's a lot of words on that screen, and I'm just going to break that down for you a little bit. So we've got, and the way you make these is Mad Libs. So you have content helps the museum, what's the organization's goal? Grow its online audience and change the way science is taught. Who's the target audience? K through 12 educators. What's the impact on the audience? Well, they feel confident, informed, and supported, and they become more effective educators. When you articulate a content strategy statement like this, you can begin to see not only what it would enable you to say yes to, but what it would enable you to say no to. And my test for a good content strategy statement is there something you've done recently that you wouldn't do now thanks to your new content strategy statement? If the answer is yes, it's working for you. And so what I want to argue is that there is no single formula for doing content strategy. There's some elements, as my little 2x2 diagram suggested, but there's no recipe. But there are some themes that you're going to hear in the next 4 presentations from a whole range of institutions, large, small, natural history, art, et cetera, et cetera. And what I want you to listen for is ideas around audience. Who is this for? What are their needs? How does each organization develop a content strategy that is authentic to the institution, to its values, to its mission, to its culture? And finally, how does the content strategy support decision making? Because when it comes right down to it, that is the mark of an effective content strategy. Does it help you make decisions and make choices? But what those choices look like are really different from one institution to another. So with that, I'm going to hand things over to Brad, who's going to talk about things at the field.
Thank you. Let's see if this works. So when we were starting to work on our slides, and I was describing our dilemma, our situation to Laura, she was like, Brad, that sounds like you're describing, it sounds like you're going from the pit of the internet to something more strategic. And I was like, that's going to be the title of my part of the presentation, because that's pretty accurate. So my name is Brad Dunn. I'm the Web and Digital Engagement Director at the Field Museum in Chicago. So I'm just going to talk briefly about the sort of higher level structure. We've actually some smaller wins that are happening that I can briefly mention, but I'm going to try to keep it sort of bigger picture. So a little bit of context for what I'm talking about. So scientific content, not exhibition content. What does that mean? It means content in our instance, it means content originating directly with curators and collection managers that does not first pass through exhibitions. It's not totally always true. We do actually work a lot with our exhibition developers, but we also my content team works a lot directly with our scientific staff. And we're not done, which of course none of us are ever done with this. So a little bit of the past. I have a former staff member here, and I warned her that my slides are going to give her PTSD. So when we arrived at the museum, we had over 150 people that could write and publish content live to the website. Just pausing for a moment. So there were literally hundreds of orphaned pages, meaning they didn't show up anywhere in the navigation. These are pages that were out of date, had missing content, broken links, things that were completely, had no brand identity, no visual standards. The website was not accessible. Obviously, there was no strategy involved. And frankly, most of the content that our scientists were publishing was really getting little to no traffic anyway. So that's kind of where we're coming from. So I'm going to just show a couple of slides that are really, honestly, very overly simplified and are not exhaustive in terms of the channels, the types of content, and they don't, it's again, very high level, but this is actually a preview of a presentation I'm about to give to a series of curators in the next couple of weeks. They all want publishing privilege back on the site. And I've explained to them that when they come to us and say, I want to publish X thing, we say, don't come to us with the what and the how, come to us with like the what it is and the why, and we'll get back to you with the how. And frankly, a lot of times the how is we're not going to publish that there because it doesn't belong there. It actually belongs somewhere else. And some are quite open to this message, and some are not. So we think of the website in terms of the message. So remember that my audience for this are scientific staff. So the message to them, there's 3 areas of the website. There's the scientific area, which is literally the departments, the research projects they're undertaking, the staff members, sort of information, access to the collections, that sort of thing. The blog, which is more for sort of like I lovingly call science nerds or science enthusiasts. So oftentimes our visitors, but not always. And then of course just events. We have a million events at the Field Museum, and so we publish them there. Then there's social media, there's PR. Again, not an exhaustive list. So I'm not going to go through all of these word for word because that would be painful for you, but we'll share this all out. But the point is, what I tried to say to them all is that each of these channels have a different audience, right? There's a why, right? So to just take website science, that audience are their academic peers. They're not actually our visitors. And the why of it is that we're trying to provide access to their peers and to their collaborators around the world. We're not succeeding in this area by all measures. In fact, at the current moment, the science section is the area where we still have to do the most work. So there will be a point in time when I want our collection databases integrated into the website so that people can find, so their peers can find what they're looking for under sort of like our brand, if you will. And then I identify sources. So the sources for that are direct traffic or search. So compare that to like content we put in social media. That's more for a general audience, visitors or science nerds. I actually try not to say general audience because that's like everyone, and which means no one. We tell the story of our museum. We share our work. We're trying to get science integrated into people's lives, even if it's just a quick flip of the thumb moment. They're thinking about something in science they weren't earlier. And the source for that one particularly is obviously just social media, but we also use social media to push to other channels. I also think it's important to point out to them that overall, that there's one section of our sort of digital ecosystem that is really meant for our scientists, the audience, and then the rest of them are various versions of the non-scientific audience, which is important to note that we're producing content for both of these audiences. Often they're producing content for their own audiences, and what we're trying to do is build ways to empower them. I can talk more about that later. So the types of content, again, overly simplified just for like our curatorial and collections staff. I can't wait till I get to tell them that I'm simplifying some content for them. So there's informational content, there's academic content. Again, the informational is who's in this department, what do they do, what are the projects we're undergoing. Academic, actionable, story-based content, the stories of the work we're doing. Often it's about the science, sometimes it's about someone out in the field doing work, sending stuff back with us, or we're able to send our social media managers out fairly locally at this point to kind of do lives as they're hunting for fossils or doing other things. And then of course there are events. So then what we do is we line up the types of things that, like the examples that we're talking about, which is kind of what I just took you through a little bit. So actionable would be like the collections database, fellowships, scholarships, internships, grants, ways that you can get involved in the museum. And again, we'll provide the slide deck so you can have all of this from all of us. And then I match up the digital distribution, so what things go into which channel. I think you get the picture. Worth noting that part of the overall ecosystem, part of the message I'm sharing with them is that part of the overall ecosystem does include personal websites and personal blogs that are not branded Field Museum, because we can't be liable for what they want to write. We can't ensure that they're following brand guidelines and standards. We can't ensure that what they're building is accessible. So a scientist might want to write about science, which they can do on their own channels. Then we're going to turn it into science for the blog, and then science for social and newsletters. So it's gonna be augmented for different channels, which is kind of a new concept for many of them, which is fair because they're academics and they're used to writing, having to go very in depth with the things they're writing. So events belong in certain places. Many of them double up. We obviously put events on the website and in social, and you can kind of like see how the rest of that works. So what is the future of it? Where is it that we're headed with all of this? So we've arrived at some of this, and we haven't made it to some of this yet. So strategy has to guide everything, and audience has to come first, because that dictates where it's going to go, and I know that all of you know this. Again, this is a dry run for me for what I'm going to be telling the curators. So this is the message we have to share with our staffs, that audience has to drive it. That says where it goes, how it gets crafted, and dictates other ways that, if we have to think about whether or not it's actionable. Accessibility standards have to be maintained. It's the spirit of the organization that we've embraced. It's also a legal mandate, actually. Science section of the website still needs to be redesigned and built. I lost funding just as we were getting ready to get to their part of the section. So that's just important to acknowledge that we're still in the middle of this as well. The web team is going to work with science and education to identify key publishers in different areas. So right now, no one has publishing ability on the site except people on my team. We do want to put some strategically placed publishers in different departments that will write and author, that then final publishing will go through us. The number of publishers will be kept small, and ultimately I'm trying to fundraise to develop a set of tools for our scientists. They output a lot of research papers, and I think it would actually be really great if we if we had a templated way of publishing their research on the site that was indexable, so it could be, we could tag it, people could search for it. I think it's a missed opportunity for the museum that we have all this intellectual property being generated through their research work that then lives on microsites and lives in different places and not under the Field Museum brand. So that's a thing that we're trying to tackle right now. And that's it for my part, so we'll bring up Susan Edwards.
Excuse me, can you hear me? Yes. I wonder if I should. Okay, I'm going to talk about video strategy, and I work at the Hammer Museum in Los Angeles, which does not have 150 people even practically on staff, much less editing the content. We're a much smaller institution, and to Laura's note, like the size of the institution also has to do with how you can implement your content strategy and create it. So the Hammer is a contemporary art institution. We also have Renaissance to 19th century paintings and works on paper. We also do a lot of events. So we have over 300 public programs every year, and we live stream online about 125 to 150 of those every year as well. We think of the exhibitions programs and our public programs, events, as on equal footing and just as important in our institution. And we think of ourselves as a community center. So we make a lot of video, and it's everywhere, and it's been a little bit of a process to get there. And video itself is pretty complex. So I'm just going to share a small bit about what we've learned in our content strategy and developing our content strategy for this. And it's just, I realized making this that we should have a session just on video strategy. Okay, so I have 3 guideposts for you. Tell your story, go where the audience is, and experiment. These are actually not very different guidelines from any other type of content that you might create, right? Your text and your images and your blog posts, right? Or anything else, a lesson plan even. Looking at Darren. But video, there's a little twist on these classics that happens with video, and I'm gonna try to explain some of this, I hope. So first of all of our content strategy comes out of our strategic goals at the institution. And so we try to ground our content in our goals. It's hard. These are 2 of our major goals right now. One is to grow our audiences, and this means 2 things. It means reach over our digital platforms, and it also means bringing in actual visitors and increasing our attendance on site. And video really provides a really dynamic, immediate medium that can grab people in that social feed as they're scrolling through their feed on social media. And it's great for awareness because it grabs people's attention and is very immediate. A second big goal of ours is to add to our community. And we do this through broadening scholarship, through publishing, through sort of adding to art history, but also through our public programs, which are often very political in nature. We want to encourage civic participation. So we had just last week alone, we had a program, we had Naomi Klein at the Hammer talking about the Green New Deal. We had a Constitution happy hour where we had a scholar from UCLA come talk to people about one section of the Constitution. And the week before that, we had an impeachment program. A couple weeks before that, we talked about abortion. Like we want to educate people and get them part of society's conversations on these current issues. And the video allows us to literally take our programs outside of our walls and into the community. People who can't come to the Hammer can see the program, can watch it online. So, my first paradigm, tell your story. We used to be very didactic at the Hammer. I think a lot of museums have taken, like the default in a lot of video production is sort of a didactic, like the curatorial way of telling a story in an exhibition. And we have turned towards really leaning into the specifics of the video medium to become more evocative and then to experiment about using the medium of video itself to bring out the message that we need to bring forth. So, our mission, this is our mission. This is the Hammer Museum's mission, which is also the core of everything we do. The Hammer Museum believes in the promise of art and ideas to illuminate our lives and build a more just world. So we have a visionary mission that is very action focused. And one of the things that we've done is really thinking about the words in our mission and what they mean and what they imply and how we can create story filters out of those ideas that we can then play out into our work. So you'll see the art and ideas I underlined is very important. Again, that's the exhibitions program, the work with local artists, and the ideas are our public programs and these conversations we try to create. But we look at things like promise, the word promise, which means we are future looking. The words build a more just world, which imply that we want to actually be action focused. We want to put information into people's hands that they can then take action with. So I'm going to show you a video. We have a video that I wonder if I can here we go. This video is one of our evergreen sort of brand videos that tries to activate our mission. And you'll see how that mission is translated into the video format in this example. So, whoops, oh no. Okay, I gotta come back here. What did I do? Ariana. Thank you.
Okay, try it.
I am. There we go. So this video really activates our mission without being a didactic thing, right? It's sort of using these short words, clips from our public programs, lots of motion and action to get across the idea of future thinking and diverse viewpoints and things like this that are core to our mission. This video took a lot of experimentation. We had a previous version of it that ran in our theater for 2 years, and then we scrapped it. And we started working on this one, which had, I think, 2 or 3 iterations. It is now an ad that we're running online. It shows in our theater before our public programs, and it's also an ad that provides a click-through to a landing page on our website that then introduces people to what the Hammer is. So it's aimed at audiences who don't know who we are and raising awareness. Okay, the next principle, now it doesn't want to, there we go. Go where the audience is. Okay, so we have a very similar approach that Brad does, but it's a little simplified. So what we used to have back in 2015 when I started at the Hammer, we were producing art videos, exhibitions, programming. Don't take pictures of this. This is out of date. I'm like, don't do this. I'm like, no, this is what not to do. So we were making videos about our exhibitions, promoting our exhibitions, and we would put them on Vimeo because we liked the Vimeo player. It looks really good embedded on our website. And then we would we started live streaming our public programs, which are the ideas, and those would live on live stream. So we thought of video as something that, like the public programs, they live here, and these live over here. And yes, everything fed back to the website, but we had a very simplistic view of why the videos were there and who they were for. We started getting a lot of requests for video, so we have one video producer. We're very lucky to have one, but she started getting a lot of curators coming, I want a video too, and curatorial doing a public program and wanting to have that artist's work documented. I want that video too. And we had to really think about prioritizing and asking questions like, who is this for, and what is the goal of the video? Why are we making this video? And what we have come to is something a lot more like what Brad described, which is we think of it as the content, we think of the different audiences we're trying to reach, and I have the word generalist in there, which is horrible. I know it's nobody, it's everybody, it's nobody. The different formats, so we've developed a bunch of different video formats, including 15-second teasers that go on Instagram or that are ads on YouTube, longer explanatory videos where we interview an artist and we talk about their process. We're creating ads, we're creating short clips from our public programs that we're sharing on Instagram, which I'll talk about in a minute. And then we think about the platform. And this is sort of a mix and match, like what's the content, what's the right audience, which format is gonna work best for that goal, and where does it need to go? And it can live on multiple different platforms, and the same content might spin out for different audiences on different platforms in different formats. Okay. Oh, I had a note here to talk about. And you also have to think about SEO and metadata, and even like the title of your video is super important to determine what it looks like on Instagram, on YouTube, on live stream, like on all the different platforms. Whole nother talk there. Okay, so experiment. Video is a fast-moving thing. How many people are like looking at TikTok now, right? Like, remember, what was it, Vine, right? So it's especially in the social media world, things are coming and going in the new platforms, and you have to be okay with experimentation and trying out new things and seeing what sticks. The technology is even evolving. We've played with so many gimbals, mics in the galleries. We've experimented even with different file formats for our videos, and also thinking about things like accessibility, captioning, SRT files, translation, etc. Experimenting is important. I could talk about this forever. I'm going to show you two examples about how we have experimented. So with live video, our public programs are normally on live stream, which is the view on the far left, and they're embedded on our website. Every once in a while, we've been experimenting with a live simulcast, not just on live stream, but also on Facebook or on YouTube. Those are the two we've done. We are now actually thinking about Periscope again, on Twitter, actually. Haven't done it yet. And this is Ted Lieu, California congressman, talking about the impeachment report. No, the Mueller report, sorry, talking about the Mueller report or the Trump-Russia investigation or something a while ago. And we simulcast it to Facebook. And one of the things we learned right away was that the audience on Facebook is very different from the audience on live stream. Live stream, people are watching online, but they're not commenting, they're not writing anything. You put it on Facebook, and it's your community, and all of a sudden they're asking questions. And they're writing back, and they're like, can you ask Senator Lieu what, da 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 da? So we realized we needed a staff person to be there to watch it. So that was me that day. And then my public programs manager was in the program at the Hammer. I was at home because it was a Sunday, and she's texting the AV manager, who's then texting me, like, you need to put that document that he just mentioned up on the Facebook. So there's a whole other sort of workflow that happens, and a team of people who have to make these happen. We live streamed to YouTube also for a while, and our ability to live stream was shut down by live stream because of copyright content. We were shut down for 3 months. We don't do that anymore. And then the other example here is an ASL tour that we did, a live ASL tour on Facebook. And so it's hard to capture. I couldn't get a screenshot that made it look like he was signing. And this was incredibly popular. We don't have a lot of opportunities to do this, but the different format that wasn't just a curator walking in the galleries talking from a script usually, which is not the best, was really popular. And I think it's opened our team up to the idea that we need to work with our curators to have a better on-screen presence and not just read from their notes. And then the second experiment was IGTV. So for a long time, we've had this challenge of these big public programs videos, which are 1.5 hours to 2 hours long, because it's documentation of the entire program. And how do you get people to watch and commit to a 2-hour long video? especially when the first 10 minutes of it is our public programs director standing there talking about all, like introducing people for many, many minutes. And we had tried taking short clips a couple years ago and putting them on Facebook. It was very labor intensive, and we didn't have a great return on anything. But then about less than a year ago, IGTV starts getting really interesting, and we were like, what if we put our clips, we did some clips and we put it on IGTV. We did the first one of these back in April, and immediately had like 40,000 views within 24 hours. And we were like, whoa, this is something. And so we experimented with the format. We had to figure out like what makes a good clip from one of our public programs. What kind of stuff do people have to say? What kind of angle do you need the people to be at? And we created guidelines that we gave to an intern that would spend like entire hours looking through the video, looking for these clips. We have to make transcripts. We log the transcripts. We had to figure out how to make the captions work, where to place them so that they look good and so that they show up in the Instagram TV, but also on the feed and still look good. And in the feed so that Al Gore's head isn't chopped off like this, which we did a couple of times. There's like a bunch of stuff that needs to be figured out here. The workflow is one of the more challenging things, but we've committed to keep doing them, and if you go to our Instagram feed now, you'll see lots of these clips, and they all have tens of thousands of views. It's kind of amazing, and lots of comments too, lots of people commenting and asking questions and joining a conversation. So, I wanted to bring in a bigger digital strategy that we have at the Hammer, because it aligns to the content strategy, and it brings in this third column I think of, which is the process and the workflows of people that need to do the work to get this happening. So you'll see like publishing is really that sort of, we like to add to the community aspect of things. It's the more scholarly civic engagement aspect, and the awareness aspect is the growing the audience part of our process, of our strategy. But the process, the idea of having tools that your staff can use, setting workflows that work for them, communication, internal collaboration, making sure that what we're doing is going to be sustainable and can scale for growth into the future is a huge part of the strategy also. And we are working on it. It is not perfect. So finally, tell your strategy, go where the audience is, and experiment. And I could talk about this forever and ever. So another session. Thanks.
All right, well, shifting gears just a little bit to talk a little bit more about like the how. So I'm really interested in building really smart strategies in organizations, whether it's digital strategies or content strategies in this case. So this is why you see building a content strategy that has a fighting chance of survival because it's grounded in organizational priorities. This is sort of an appeal to come at the problem or the opportunity of a content strategy less from a project perspective and more from an organizational culture and values-based perspective. Because our best strategies are really the ones that are woven into the fabric of our organizations, right? And we talk increasingly, especially about digital strategy, is not this thing you do over here, right? But something that you integrate and you apply to the processes that you already have going on in your organization. So I'm trying to sort of make the same argument for content strategy. In other words, it's something that really needs your attention, not at sort of this project level and this thing that you start and you finish, but more as like an ongoing part of how you build content and how you engage your audiences. So, and the other thing I want to add is that these strategies are really, they should be dynamic, they should be fluid and adaptive, because increasingly a lot of how we engage our audiences is not getting mediated by us. It's being mediated by the Googles, the Facebooks, the Amazons. So if we approach this type of a problem as like a one and done, then we're missing the entire boat of how these third parties are increasingly telling us how we need to and how we can engage with our audiences. So where do you start? Looking around at what your organization values today kind of gives you a clue for where you can take things going forward. So, you might have leadership that values attracting repeat visitors, and maybe that's something that you start with. You might have an upcoming membership campaign that you really need to get everybody on board with, and that offers you an opportunity to kind of carry things forward. The point is, taking a look around, not at sort of like the big bang, massive problems, which we all are all aware of in our organizations, but more about sort of those mid and near-term opportunities and the existing values that that already have your leadership buy-in. So for us, that really comes down to kind of more of an evidence-based approach. We are a science organization, a natural history organization, so people really care about, okay, so you want us to pay attention to this, show me the data that says why we should. So what does a content strategy look like? I think you probably have one, or at least the beginnings of one, and maybe you don't know it. Or maybe you hadn't sort of considered it to be part of the content strategy that you can carry on and develop. So I think it can really be a collection of small things, templates, template tips, how-tos, tutorials, all those guides and things that you think get created and ignored over the years. There are germs and kernels of truth and traction that those create, and over time those can add up, believe it or not, I think, to the beginnings of a content strategy. So this is really anything that already informs how content is generated in your organization, and anything that positively impacts the audiences and the strategies that you want to evolve. So this is, again, just an appeal to sort of lean on what's worked, lean on what you already know to be sort of true to the organization's mission, but also true to sort of the culture and the resources that your organization is prepared to support. So for us, that comes down to just, these are really more examples, this is not comprehensive. Building out a search strategy beyond what we already do with SEO. The impact of mobile continues to be a massively, and I can't overstate how important this is, dimension of our content strategy. And then finally, again, we love data. And so using A/B testing and building that program has also been really instrumental in how we talk about this type of thing. So beyond SEO, we've kind of currently started kind of a mini project in taking a look at, when people get to amnh.org, what are they searching for? And when they get the search results, are they getting the stuff that they're looking for? Pretty basic, right? But this is building on an organizational interest in SEO. So this notion of, well, search is important, user search, therefore we need to pay attention to how we appear in Google, but also we're arguing that we need to also pay attention to how people are navigating our site through search, our search functionality, and how that informs the content that we're creating on our site. Because if someone comes to our website and searches for parking or planetarium, or in one case strollers, we discovered that, oh my gosh, we don't really have a whole lot of stroller content on our site. I guess we should build it, right? Or we should create it and publish it. So it sounds like no-brainer stuff, but this is, again, just incrementally building that content strategy out over existing priorities that are already receiving buy-in. Again, the impact of mobile. So I think the initial introduction to our leadership around mobile was back in 2014 when we launched a responsive redesign of amnh.org. Over time, I think the conversation around mobile continues to move on. More recently, the concept of using the mobile experience as a very key dimension of our content strategy is picking up steam, especially as it integrates with the visitor journey research that we've been doing under Matt Tarr, who's also at AMNH and has been facilitating that as well. So this is a really old conversation. This is nothing new. This does not demand, brand new tech or anything like that. But it does, again, sort of, we're trying to extend and inform, how the mobile experience should factor into what we think of when it comes to a content strategy. And then finally, A/B testing. This kind of was a surprise for me, thanks to our Director of Business Analytics and Insights. we have found that building up our A/B testing program on amnh.org has really helped, I think, grease the wheels for some larger conversations around content strategy, and just keeping the focus on, again, just tiny incremental moves towards engaging our audiences better online. So in the previous sort of mini search initiative I mentioned earlier, we're finding that a number of our hypotheses about like how people are getting to the site, what they're searching for when they get there, are there additional cues we can offer to people who are using our search functionality, and then when they get results, what is the information that we should be providing in that moment? A lot of those questions are now getting mapped into a series of A/B tests and qualitative research tests that we're currently building out. So more to come on that front. But in terms of how we, again, sort of bring this back to our leadership, all the findings that we want to present and the recommendations for next steps, this has continually been really invaluable in sort of underscoring those priorities. So all this is to say is that content strategy is not this monolithic thing. It doesn't have to be this monolithic thing that you do like one and done and then you move on to the next thing. This is an appeal to maybe think or look more closely at what you've already got going on that works, or something that you want to extend into a more mature content strategy for your organization. And you might find, surprisingly, that those building blocks are already all around you. So that's all for me.
Hi, everyone. So I'm going to be a little bit different than everybody else who just talked to you all. Kind of going off of Laura and Susan's notes, the size matters in your institution when you're thinking about your content and the scalability, but so do your priorities. And I'm coming from the Adler Planetarium, so we're not only a planetarium, but we're also a museum. We're kind of part science center, and we haven't quite figured out who we are, so trying to communicate that to the 600,000 people who come in every year has kind of been a challenge for us. Not in any way helped by the fact that we've realized in the last 3 months we don't actually have a content strategy as an institution. Each department made their own and didn't tell anybody. So this is a cautionary tale, and we're going to learn some lessons that the Adler has just now started to put together. But the upside is you can learn from your mistakes and then use that to convince your executive team that you do need an institution-wide content strategy. And I'm going to show you how. So what we've figured out is each department had made their own policy. So I sit in the collections department, and we had made this beautiful, like, 10-page document about how we were going to create content, how we were going to share it, who was interested in it. The answer is we do scientific instruments from 1600 to 1800, so not a lot of people, but we can find ways to incorporate that. What we discovered, though, was that our marketing colleagues who actually control all of our outward-facing technology, so our social media, our website, anything that's going to the press, didn't know what our mission was and like what we were trying to do within the Adler's goals. And that started to make sense to us why we felt our content never reflected what we were saying. For them, they kind of have said that we lack an institutional clarity on our prioritized audience segments, on our content prioritization, and actual content. So they never created a content management or a content strategy because they've been doing it piecemeal per project, which means if you come to the Adler for a certain project, if you come back, you're looking at 2 different Adlers here because we create new stuff ad hoc as we go. And this has actually been a real problem for our guest experience team, not knowing how to create overarching content then for people who are coming on a daily basis. It's only been in the last 3 or 4 months, as I said, that we realized none of us had these standards, and it kind of came out of one large-scale event that was quite a failure for us and quite humbling, and that was Apollo 11. So it was the 50th anniversary this July, and as the Adler Planetarium, the country's oldest planetarium, and the only space place in Chicago, because we don't count MSI, because we're the Adler, we decided we were going to take ownership of this, and like the 50th was going to be our big moment. This is what was going to bring people in the door all year. Our marketing team was so excited about it. They planned a 3-day event, and then the budget came in and marketing pulled out because they could not afford the experiential marketing they wanted to do. But they had already informed the public that we were going to do a 3-day event. So those of us who were tasked with planning this 3-day event had about 3 months to plan an event to serve about 10 to 20,000 people. That was the goal. And center around Apollo 11. So I put this image up because this was this beautiful graphic our designer made that we were going to talk about Apollo 11. But this was the website that our marketing team made for us. And as you can tell, it is mainly image and very hard to figure out what we're actually doing. We gave a pretty succinct history of Apollo 11. We kind of encouraged people to come celebrate with us. Our quote was, "Small steps lead to the giant leaps. Be inspired by the moon and explore how NASA and other organizations are planning our return to the moon and beyond, and how everyone can be a part of the ongoing story of discovery." That never made it pretty much anywhere else outside of the website. We made this promise, we said we were going to do this, and then after that, all the content devolved because we didn't actually discuss amongst ourselves what the plan was. So what I was informed our vision was called Voices of Apollo. So on my content that I was in charge of, which was online exhibitions, we focused on the 400,000 people that it took to make the Apollo 11 program work who were not Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, or Michael Collins, because that was what we told our, theme was going to be. So we created this great Google Arts and Culture exhibit. It got picked up by Google. It kind of went fairly viral for the Adler. We were really proud of it. We started planning on-site programming where we brought in 5 different speakers who had presented on this online exhibition. They were spacesuit engineers. They were rocket fuel chemists. They had all been a part of the program. It was a very diverse selection. We were very excited. And then we started seeing how marketing was marketing the event. They did not come to any of the talks with the speakers. They were not aware of what we were setting up because they did not sit on the planning committee. And we didn't have any way to inform them besides a Slack channel, which we found out later they weren't necessarily reading. So they went into our Google Drive of the transcripts from the interviews and started pulling content to throw up online. This went up the week of the event. We didn't tell anybody the event was happening until the week it started. Not sure why, never was informed, but you can see here they started focusing on 2 of the people who were going to come in, but the problem was they had not been in the talks, so they started interpreting their transcripts and actually misquoted them quite a few times in our marketing material, and we were told this was their interpretation of what the person said, and we had to point out that that is not what quotations are for. Yeah. So that's all to say, they were trying to spin this in a way to fit with what we had told the public we were doing. But I am now worried that I have 2 85-year-olds who I have promised are going to come on site and talk, and really hoping that they're not tech savvy and going on Instagram and being like, I never said that. We eventually were able to get these changed, but it took a lot more steps than it should have because that team believed that they were the owners of the content. That they did this right, we provided them with what we had, and this was what the message was. How did we not know? So as we moved on, we had these speakers come in, and we saw it as the highlight of the day. There was one other programming that was really pushed out by our marketing team. That was we had Captain Jim Lovell come and do a conversation in our theater. 200 people could get in. The tickets sold out in less than a day. And then we had to try and explain what the other 10,000 people were going to do for that day. So that's where this came in, is we were going to have these speakers in our bigger theater where we could fit 400 or 500 people. They were going to do 2 different talks, and people could kind of shuffle in. And this was not going to be a separate cost. The Lovell ticket was a $50 upcharge for the event. So you can see where not as many people can actually enjoy this. The problem was, again, this was not what marketing picked up as our priority for the event. So on this list, because you can't see it very well because it's so tiny, it's at the very bottom mentioning that these people will be on site. It does not say when, and it does not say where. So when the event started, it turned out that they were placed at the 11 a.m. time slot in our smallest theater. The event started at 9 and ran till 6. So people showed up at 4 p.m. asking when they could talk to the spacesuit engineer, and we had to tell them that that man went home 3 hours ago because his talk was at 11. Only 25 people stumbled upon this actual talk with people who had worked in NASA because it was not included on the map, it was not included on the program for the day. It just listed that this was going to happen, but didn't say when and it didn't say where. So, as you can tell, that's a problem. And part of the problem was that this website was embedded within 3 different clicks from our homepage. So if somebody wanted to find what we were doing for Apollo 11, they basically had to know it was happening because it was not listed in the navigation bars. You just had to kind of keep clicking through. So we had very few people actually find out this was happening. And so we kind of got to the point where we all knew it failed, and partially because there was 0 difference between last year's July and this year's July on that same weekend, despite investing over $10,000 into an event that we thought was going to be our biggest for the year. And so it's very easy for people to throw everyone under the bus, which we all did, as we sat in this meeting trying to figure out how this failed. There was a lot of talk about, like, our guests just don't like this content, nobody was interested, people don't care. But we all know that's not true. That was just the excuses we were making to cover the fact that, like, we didn't tell people what we were doing. We didn't explain why you should come. But when we can point it out and you can hit the bottom line, you can very easily convince your executive team that, like, something needs to change. So despite the fact that we've known since I've been at the Adler, which is 3 years, that we don't have a unified content strategy, we're just now taking steps to handle that. So I titled this, Houston, We've Had a Problem. Tom Hanks messed that line up, so they did call and say it in a past tense because the Apollo 13 astronauts were already determined to fix it. And that's part of what we're doing at the Adler. We have not yet fixed our problem. We're not at the point where we're like, and now it's great, and here's my 10 slides about why we're better. We're trying, but we've already committed to making that step. So what happened is we've learned all of us were so possessive of our piece of the pie. So marketing was very possessive of the sites. We were possessive of the content, and it was just all down the line. Nobody wanted to share and open up and accept the fact that maybe they're not the expert on how to do this. So what we did is, instead of fitting content strategy into marketing's plans for the new year, is we've created a digital working group. So now we have pulled from all of our 8 departments 2 representatives to sit down in a room together and figure out what we need to do. This is partially because we are launching new exhibits, we're doing a new brand, we're gearing up for a capital campaign, and no one has time to make content strategy, which is why it's been kicked down the line for the last at least 8 years. But having everybody sit down together kind of helps open that up. And so that's kind of my takeaways, is if you know something is failing, if you can get it in writing and you can get it with statistics that really hurt the bottom line, you can tend to get more institutional changes made. We'd been kicking around this idea of an institution-wide content strategy made by a working group for over a year now, and we just got the executive approval after these numbers came in. Similarly, we decided to do this cross-departmentally because we've realized that when we don't talk to each other, this is what happens. And so you just can't be afraid to point out your mistakes. What we've learned at the Adler is our institution memory is very long, but it's also very selective. So this was not the first time we had something like this happen, but we all sat in this room and we're like, how? We don't know. And we're like, yeah, no, we do. We're just pretending. And so now we kind of have this going. So as we launch our new exhibit, we've reformatted our website so you don't have to click through 5 or 6 links to find the website that tells you what the new exhibit is. We put it front and center instead of focusing on buy a ticket or get a membership, which is what probably 80% of our front page of our website used to be. So with that, I am done. But hopefully you've learned that, like, failing can sometimes be helpful to get things done, but I am just as interested in you to see how our working together ends up for us.
That was awesome. Thank you, everybody. I think I'm actually not going to talk about these takeaways. I'm just going to let him sit here because it's 12:25. And so I'm going to toss it out to the audience because maybe there are questions. You've heard, we just threw a lot at you. All really good stuff. Thank you so much to my awesome panelists. Questions?
Great job, everybody. Susan, I want to ask you about, you're saying experiment, right? And TikTok specifically. I had to have this conversation the other day. I said, I'm scared that we're not on there and we're not doing anything on it. But should I be scared, or is it just going to be the thing that disappears in a couple of years? How do you feel about TikTok specifically?
I don't know anything about TikTok. I just know it's a thing, and I've seen the word, and so I think experiment with knowledge. Like, do some research first. When we experiment on IGTV, we had already been on Instagram for years. It was one of our biggest platforms. We knew the audience. We understood that there was a potential there, and that we had a hunch that we were testing out, right? I know nothing about TikTok. Like, I need to go do some research. I actually asked my social media manager a couple weeks ago, I was like, let's just find out what this is about. Let's learn. And she immediately uncovered like the issues with like the Chinese government or something. I don't know. Yeah, so I just use that as an example of how quickly things are changing. But yeah, do your research.
Okay, I have one question, one comment. Susan, I was wondering, you were saying that you had one producer for video. How big is your team for production? And do you have a video team production, or do you rely on facility rentals and other departments?
So we have one video producer in the comms department, and she's the one who makes all the produced videos. So the one that I showed you guys, she made, and she's beginning to end, she does everything. She's amazing. Do not try to hire her.
What's her name? No.
And then we also have a very large AV production team that does all of our public programs. So this is like a theatrical team that does all the lighting and everything. And they have a dedicated team of people that run the live stream operation. So there's a live stream application, and there's a switcher who's doing the live editing, and there's cameras, usually two cameras that they're editing in between.
So your video production team isn't necessarily part of the live video production?
No, they work really closely together because Chisa's our video producer. She has to work with them on getting all the stuff up online. And then often with live video, with the live stream, there's an issue the next day, and she has to actually edit the video, or she has to cut off the intro or shorten the outro if something happened. And so there is work that she has to do also regarding publishing that online and getting it online.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, it's a collaboration. It's a big collaboration.
Yeah, and Jessica, I just wanted to say that your talk hurt me physically. I've done the exact same process so many times, but from the marketing perspective, and I 100% understand.
Hi, this is directed at Susan at the Hammer. As a resident of Los Angeles, I can attest to the really wonderful presence that Hammer Museum has online, and how I find that it reaches, a wide, breadth of Los Angeles. And also, as a UCLA alum, I'm proud to be somewhat affiliated with the Hammer Museum. I was going to ask you, does your affiliation with the University of California system affect the way that you present the museum online?
Yeah, I mean, we think of ourselves as part of that community, right? And a lot of the speakers, actually a huge amount of the speakers that come to speak in our theater are UCLA professors. The person who did that Constitution Happy Hour last week was a UCLA professor. And we like to think of ourselves as, that's part of the civic engagement and the education of our audiences, right? Is we are providing you with information that will help you become a better citizen, and I think that's on par with the goals of the larger university.
I don't have a question as much as a comment. I want to commend you all for the valuable information you've just relayed to us at the last session of this conference. Fabulous job. Thank you so much. And just to add to Susan's answer to the TikTok question, I think that is exactly what they're trying to convey here the solution really is in the evaluation, the individual customized solution for your institution based on your resources, your bandwidth, your abilities and limitations, and where your audience is and how you're going to effectively reach them.
One more question, if there is another, because it's 12:30 actually. If we're not, then
Bueller.
exactly on time. I think one more.
I think this is a good wrap-up question. Just, you mentioned the presentations would be available. How will they be available?
Well, at the very least, we can share it.
Yeah. I'm on the board. There's Matt. I was told that all of these sessions are being recorded. Is that true?
Audio, perhaps.
Audio, right. Right. So at some point in the next couple of months, to be realistic, there will be audio, but we can definitely share the slides. And,
Yes.
yeah. For the internet. There's MCN's content strategy for you.